Welcome back. Good morning to all the retiree and wannabes out there. Today is the Financial Friday where we try to focus mostly on budgets, money, security, that type of thing. Today I'm going to cover off the US dollar threshold in a little bit more detail and why the 5-year chart is the most valid chart for you. I'll dive into why that is, why other currencies have also been affected by it, but due to the more linear nature of the US dollar and the euro, you're going to find that the secondary currencies like the Great British Pound, Canadian, New Zealand, and Australian have a lot more action in them, which in many ways gives us more opportunity to be able to send money without having to do multi-year ahead. But 1 year, a budget ahead is always good. So if you want to skip ahead, you can skip ahead of that. It'll be about minute 4:30 that you're going to want to skip ahead to, and you can skip all of that if you want to. Later in the video, I'm going to talk about security, types of apps that have security, etc. that I think you need as a part of your moving to the Philippines. Let's go through the US dollar versus the peso in a little bit more detail. And I can help you out as to why the 5-year chart is the most valid chart at this particular time. The 10-year is pretty much garbage, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. But let's just very quickly, let's go through these thresholds of the black line is 50 pesos, the red line is 51, 52 range, okay? And why I think that based on a 5-year chart, you can see you get a lot of long-term rippling around 50, giving you lots of opportunity to capitalize on your money. Those yellow bars are indicating the number of years. So as we slide into the other chart, I'm using my trading chart here, trading program. So that purple section in the middle, that is the roughly 25-year chart, and it's showing two very distinct bottomings and toppings within that pink or purplish looking area. The green is kind of the maximum. You're coming up on the max as it is. The orange is that 50 threshold that I think has more validity in the current market, and why those big waves don't mean anything anymore when it comes to the US dollar. Again, a quick reflection, but this time looking at the 5-year chart, and you'll notice that that rippling effect is now between 50 and 51. It's changed in the last 5 years because they were more in tune with what the euro was doing. But this new big player has always been a big player, China. If you look at where their volumes started to make inroads, it was right around that 2016 mark. 2018, they made another fairly good size bump up in the market through to 2020, and then has been flattening that top of volume, okay, volume movement in their currency. If you actually look at the currency itself, it doesn't really swing all that far. But I think that's the main reason why you're seeing a new flattening effect. And it'll take a while for that to all shake out. It'll take a couple of administrations in both the Euro markets and the US presidency to see how this will all shake out. But we're only concerned about, say, 5-year periods at the most. Again, if you now look at the volumes of the euro versus the US dollar, you can see those volumes are pretty equal, even though in about 2015 timeframe there was a overall shift upward, and you can see that reflected very similarly with the pound versus US dollar, up, and everything kind of cruises across. Doesn't matter what the actual chart is doing, the blue line is reflected, but the volumes of movement are in there. And the only reason I include the Canadian here is to show that rippling. You notice that our volumes are low, but we have these ripples, and then we have this high volume, and then it comes down a bit and up again and down again and up again and down again. And you will see that with the Chinese for a long time. But we can't discount the fact that they are a major, major player in the economics of this planet. Well, we're trying a video today on my new GoPro. Actually, Lynn's GoPro. Here's the Pocket 2, which is the camera that I prefer. But Lynn doesn't do much selfie, so it'll be a good camera for her. But I'm down at the ocean here doing some shooting, and I'll do Financial Friday down here. Of course, it's well before the currencies have closed yet, so this video will be uploaded shortly after I inject the currencies for this weekend. So in the corner here, I'm going to show, I better sit over a little bit. Oh, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle on the camera. Let's see if the steady part of this GoPro works. Anyway, the apps that I suggest that you have, you've got XE, which is your financial app. Again, you can put that as a widget on most on most devices. And you can have a look at what your rate is for that day. If you don't need the charts, you don't need the charts. They don't forecast ahead, of course, and all you can do is look behind. But if you're paying attention to the rates, you kind of know where you stand, okay? The next app is Proton. Now, Proton is a very good email program. Not for day-to-day use, though, in many ways, because it requires a passcode every time you get an email. The generic ones that you get from Proton, of course, they don't require a passcode to get into them. But I like that because you can set up with a friend or a family member back home that they can act as your emergency person if you need to have cash sent quickly and you're not able to, for whatever reason, do it online or whatever other method that you set up. I would strongly suggest that you're getting Proton. Set that password up. Now, I've had a few emails since I initiated it, and it may suggest that you can do more than one passcode, etc., for the app. But learn the app. We all have to learn them, and there's a lot of videos already out there that teach you all of these things. So, but Proton Mail, I would suggest that as your security. It would also come in handy that if you're set up with a lawyer or an accountant or a bank or whatever, that if they are amenable to having this email connection where you have a passcode on file, perfect, really going to help, right? So the other app there is Remitly, one way to send money if you set it up online. We do not use that app. I have had cursory looks at it and talks with other people, and it seems like it's more set up for the person who's going to send money every month or every paycheck. And it appears from talking with a couple of people that the cap is probably around $1,000. I don't know. I can't say for sure. Again, it's not an app that we're going to use. So I'm not versed on any changes or updates, etc. But I would suggest you have that in your arsenal. If your country doesn't seem to have these remittance outlets like iRemit or Metro Remit, which are run by Filipinos that are in your country. Trust me, they're in your country. Here in BC and Alberta, when we did a trip, we went all the way up to the Yukon and back down through Northwest Territories in Alberta. And every town we stopped in, we would run into a Filipino, and Lynn would quickly ask, how many Filipinos are in town? My goodness, it's like 10%, almost everywhere. That often means that they've got a home-based business, and some of them may be doing iRemit. LBC boxes, keep in touch. We've got an update on our LBC box. The DMinder app, that will help you if you're a pretty fair-skinned person. You want to make sure that you're exposing yourself to the sun, yes, but in a proper manner. Make sure you're not burning. Pay attention to those UV indexes. You are not going to be out in the sun at solar noon. You just turn into a little candle. But it's a worthy app to have around so that you don't get yourself blindsided and accidentally burned. Okay, but you need to get your vitamin D, and you don't need to buy it by a pill. It's free. So there you go. Save yourself 500 pesos a month. I've touched on this before, but I'll continue to touch on it. There's also WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger for talking, but I like Signal. Signal is a video texting and talk app, which I find to be nice because with the way that some platforms are right now, I have a sneaky feeling some of these ones that are more mainstream are going to run into trouble. Now, my old favorite one used to be ICQ, but nobody's using it anymore. But again, if you're setting up with a family member or friend, I would set up Signal and get them set up, and then you can just phone and it will ring like a regular phone call, all of that type of thing. And at least you can leave a text message for them if necessary, and that way you're in contact and you guys can set up a time. Again, Proton Mail, you fire them a mail, they'll also get another alert, and they'll use their passcode, get in and say, you know, what time can we set up a talk, right? All of these are security measures, right, guys? You need to have some kind of security, and I will touch on this again. I run into people all the time in the Philippines that go broke. I don't mean they're stone broke, but they're stone broke for maybe 10 or 15 days until their next check comes in. Those people are running too close to the wire, and if your currency dips below your threshold, your buying power is even going to be worse. So instead of maybe 10 days with no food, you might be 15 or 20 days with no food. So smart planning, please, smart planning. So if you're having to go there on a fixed budget, let's talk about that. If you're going there on a fixed budget and you've got, say, $1,500 from your pension, whether it be Canadian or US, I don't care. Let's just use that round number of 1,500. Lynn and I live on about 1,200 there, and we live fairly well. Mind you, our rent is about 125 to 150 a month, okay? So our rent is quite cheap, and we can live on that 1,200, and we are within walking distance of the malls and everything. So even from a trike standpoint, we save a lot of money. Now, there are rainy days, and we take a trike, but it's not that expensive. We're living local enough that we know the rates, and once you get to know the distance that you can cover in your location, they will stop with all of this stuff and realize that you're local. Sorry about that. I got rained out and I got something on the lens, so I lost a bit of the video there, but we'll cover it off here. So getting back to the 1,500 peso dollar pension, and spending, say, $1,200 or even $1,000 if you can get that low. If your rent is similar to ours and you're single, then obviously you're not feeding two people, and maybe you can get down to that $1,000. Remember, we're not bar hopping, but yes, I'm doing movies probably 3, maybe 4 times a week, depending on the movie schedule. But again, going back to that, we are saving $300. So if we've sent money, we take that $300 in pesos, which is about 1,200 pesos. We put that aside in a separate bank account. As a matter of fact, in our case, it's a separate bank altogether, by design, making it harder for us to get to the money. But over the course of the year, that's 14,400 pesos. Now you're starting to get a savings plan in place here, not just for your food, but that eventual medical. So if you're playing tight to the wire, that's what you're going to need. And that medical is going to become even more important for you to stay tight to that savings for multi-years. It's necessary because you're going to have dips in your currency rate. And if it here we go with those rented lips again. If it falls below that threshold that we've set, or the threshold that you have set, then you need to be even more vigilant, because you're going to have to ride through those leaner times. And that's going to steal away from your budgeting, okay? And it's going to steal away from that that building of your medical fund. So even more important, so let's assume that you get 3 years down the road and you've got, a nice chunk of change sitting there now. Let's say you've managed to salt away 40,000 pesos and you have a downturn. Well, all you want to be doing is supplementing the offset, right? So maybe you're not able to put any money away for the time being and you're having to live on your full 1,500. But if it's only 1,400, put the 100 away. You're not quite ready yet, right? The general rule of thumb, if you talk to most people there, you've got to have 20 to 25,000 or 1,000,000 pesos put aside for that emergency. 20,000 US, 25,000 Canadian, that's your 1,000,000 pesos. And if you have something serious that hits you, it's not hard to burn up 300,000-400,000 pesos. And yes, that's not 1,000,000,000 pesos, but again, ongoing clinical afterwards, maybe. Okay, maybe it's a need to you get your basic medical done, and now you have to go back to your country that you're familiar enough with the medical or has a stronger medical knowledge of your particular situation, a la cancers, right? So think about that. The 1,000,000 pesos is a goal. 500,000 pesos is going to get you through that emergency that might be serious. And yeah, it's just so important, guys. Separating your bank accounts, I've done that for decades. I mean, before the kids were even born, we had the bank account set up somewhere else. Important, in my opinion. Okay, let's call that a wrap. Tomorrow or on Wednesday, one of those 2 days, Lynn will join me and we will do a 50-50 life. You're living like we do, half here and half there. Stay tuned for those end cards. I'll surprise you. Later, Gators.